No, because this will be here. Episode 6 of Office Hours.
Boom.
We're back.
I gotta say right off the bat, the best thing about this episode is that for the year that I was a student and my loved ones probably were like, there's no fucking way you're getting any kind of master's or whatever. Proof. This teacher said it. I did not coerce her.
Right off the bat. But
I was a student.
Yeah, it was
Boom.
pretty interesting how you did tell her that, hey, would you mind really explicitly stating this so that everybody knows? Like, that was pretty funny.
That was cool. Yeah, I like that. I think it was funny that I did that too.
But yes, a great conversation.
Yeah.
Yet again.
Jeez.
Right? Remote work, I think everybody can relate to some extent. Some member of their family or somebody that they know is currently doing remote work. And so talking about the effects and what the future holds was fascinating. Do you want to briefly explain who our guest was again, just for people who maybe didn't listen?
Yeah, Marianne is a department chair of the HR management program within the business school at Golden Gate University. So she's the program director for that program. And yeah, so she teaches and formulates the curriculum, aligns with the SHRM standards. So that's the Society of Human Resource Management. That's like they provide certifications for HR professionals. It's kind of like the big one to get, I guess, if you want to like continue advancing your career. And yeah, so I had her as a teacher, I don't know, within the last, it's like, feel like I'm about to talk in like dog years or something, like COVID years, COVID months within the last year, maybe year and a half. And yeah, so she was gracious enough to come on the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she shared a lot of her insights about what remote work kind of looks like right now and what are some pros and cons and what should businesses kind of be doing or looking out for in this era, because this stuff just happened so fast.
Yeah.
And
a lot of companies were forced into it. Some of them may have been thinking about it and hadn't had the financial capital necessary to like make the jump, and then they had to, so they were probably in decent shape. Some places were probably not even thinking about going remote. Like, remote, why would I go remote?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you have to. And welcome to 2020. Yeah, so it is quite the working world we're dealing with out there.
Yeah.
And we talk about a ton of really interesting topics, and we can go through some of them again today. But I mean, the biggest hurdle I think that most companies are dealing with right now is balancing in an era of COVID that schools are shut down. And so you're forcing everybody into the household, where I think the hardest thing right now is expectations on what being a productive working member of your company looks like, when we all have to have the understanding and the respect to know that these people are probably like having to coordinate their 10-year-old's Zoom class at the same time. Like, that's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to get the same out of people when those types of distractions are present. So I think that was probably the most interesting side of what we talked about, because I think I see it in my work. You know, I have coworkers who are going through that, and thank God I work for a company that does a really good job at dealing with this. And that could just be manager to manager. I have a manager who does a really good job allowing like our team to like have flexibility in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of companies that I'm sure do not. And it's not only, if you're not going to be open and willing to have these types of circumstances infiltrate your workspace as a manager on a call, and somebody's kid walks in and that's going to bother you, that the downstream stress on your workforce that's going to cause around being at home is probably massive and so unnecessary.
Hmm.
And I think that's going to be a big part of the conversation moving forward with remote work is how people are dealing with that.
Yeah. So do you think there's been a positive forced pressure to consider the whole person rather than just the employee?
I mean, to be honest, no. I think good companies have a positive pressure, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people who like this conversation we're having. This like doesn't even occur to them. This doesn't even pop up in their world. They're, like for example, I know that the one of the big issues that this is, I'm sure, going to happen in is like sales industries, right? Talk about the most like money driven industry out there, right? Like if you're in sales, like you are the part of the business that is keeping the business alive by selling more products that they sell as a company. And so when we talked briefly in the interview about like shareholders and how like short-term profits for shareholders is like the most important thing to a lot of companies, and that's the way they operate on a 90-day basis. Well, the salespeople are the ones who largely are helping deliver on that 90-day goal. I mean, because if you're not selling, you're not hitting your, you can cut costs only so much. Like a lot of times your costs are your costs, but I mean, and it's funny because that cost side, like the alternative is you lay people off and you save a salary a year, and
Hmm.
there's ways to do that, but it's like never good companies don't look to that first, in my opinion. And that puts a lot of weight on the sales team. So I think if anything, this is in certain lines of work going to be even it's going to play out even more to an extreme with pressures to meet sales quotas. Like, and again, like shutdowns, record unemployment, financial, whatever we're in. Um, there's a lot of like, there's going to be more pressure to perform in a more difficult circumstance.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's tough. I don't know what the right answer is for like how to go about it in that sector, but yeah, I mean, if somebody's really being thoughtful about their people and the work that they do, then they will think of the whole person.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
a lot of people in positions that are just blinded by the financial success. I mean, rightfully so in some cases, right? Like you got to keep your company and your business alive. Like if your job is if your company's success and surviving COVID is dependent on continued sales and like, producing revenue,
Hmm.
I mean, that's stressful.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the nature of that beast. But yeah, so it's interesting dynamic out there.
I'm hoping that COVID. Okay, well, of course, I don't want any like company to fail, but
Sure.
I'm hoping that this could reveal and sh- show some of the faults. Like, if there is a company who is still neglecting the person and just seeing the employee during really stressful times, and so say somebody doesn't meet their quota for what they're supposed to be doing, and they get like negative repercussions, but they have so much else that they have to worry about, then like that company is failing, and it's reaping the benefit, or it is not succeeding based on its reaction and response to what's going on. You know what I mean? And so now they're like, okay, maybe we do have to do something or change something because obviously our employees aren't satisfied, our employees aren't happy.
Hmm.
But I guess that's also where a lot of companies just have a high turnover rate and they just keep hiring
Yeah.
and hiring and hiring.
Yeah. No, I think in a perfect world, you're right. I think it's just there's so many things in business that get done that are just like you're saying, well, you can just hire somebody else at a cheaper rate. Like hire somebody for less because there's so many people who need jobs.
Hmm.
So then you can get somebody else in there that'll do it, and you don't have to pay them as much.
Yeah.
Supply and demand.
I don't like that.
I don't like that either.
I need good quality.
Yep. But you can probably get somebody desperate who is a high quality employee for cheap when the demand is so high. I mean, think about all the sales. Like, here's the one. The entire sales team at LinkedIn was let go. Couple hundred people.
Wow.
They don't have an outside sales. And I'm fairly certain of this because I saw a lot of LinkedIn stuff going around about it on LinkedIn, about LinkedIn, by former LinkedIn employees.
Dude, I like stopped getting some of those messages to like go premium for a while.
Yeah.
Was it just, I mean, obviously COVID impacted them. Do you know any more
For sure.
details? Like, did they just not need it?
They were.
Because they're growing rapidly.
Yeah, my thought on this, and I don't know, but if you were asking me, I would say that advertising and marketing on LinkedIn became so lucrative that in a world of COVID, when you could be like, have 20 people who manage the marketing side of LinkedIn versus a 200-person sales team making marginally better, if at all better, income for the company. If you knock out, I mean, literally, let's just think 100 people, let's just say they average $100,000 a year income. I mean, Jesus, you're taking so much of your like money and putting it into your people.
Mm-hmm.
And if those people aren't making enough to justify keeping them as a division of the company, then why not just triple down on your marketing, try and get every marketing dollar you can? Because people want to market or like advertise on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And they can make money doing that, and it's built into the software. Like they literally, all they need to do is have incoming marketing sales.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like premium service is, plus I think they saw the writing on the wall, right? In a world where people aren't having the excess money, like LinkedIn to a company, if you're a recruiter, is a, maybe in today's day and age, it's like a mandatory thing you have to have, but it's kind of a luxury item too, right? So it's not people's first spend, but social's becoming the hottest thing in marketing. So people are going to throw their money all over social. And that's what LinkedIn's becoming.
And they're only upgrading and adding better features like every couple months, I feel.
Yeah.
I see something new.
Yeah, and they have to continue to be able to invest in their innovation as a tech company. Otherwise, they're going to get left behind in an era of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it sucks. Like, it's crazy. And I don't even remember what made me bring up the whole LinkedIn thing.
Sales team.
Oh yeah, you could just turn over like crazy. And so my point being, thank you. There's high quality candidates out there who you can get for cheaper because they just need a job. You know?
Yeah, it's like everybody is going to college now for the most part. Like there's still a lot of people who don't, but that's the expectation now. And so there are more qualified candidates out there. And it's kind of like that's just the new minimum. And that's the new minimum wage.
Yeah.
Which is kind of concerning.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, like you're saying, with all these jobs being laid off and then companies being able to hire kind of at free will.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be so interesting to see how this plays out over the next like 2 years.
Yeah. There's actually something else I wanted to get your take on with the whole how the workforce is going to be shaped and what it's going to look like in the coming years. We kind of touch on it in our conversation. I brought up the point that like I think it was Oklahoma City specifically was offering people money to move into their city.
Yeah.
And so I have a thought that I want your take on. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the spouse thing that we talked about too. Mm-hmm. Spouses moving together, having two competing priorities in their jobs. So if we're allowing everybody to work from anywhere, and Marianne pointed this out, that if you're a tech person in Silicon Valley and you move to Oklahoma City, HR is adjusting your wages to support you where you live. Mm-hmm. does so let's say we get this new workforce that's now able to be anywhere, right? So you could be in Europe, you could be wherever you want. Do, does there become a strong case for there being this new like federal level
Oh.
minimum wage for like reclassified jobs if you do this job this amount of time? Because if it doesn't matter where you like, the income disparities are heavily like from Oklahoma and California, our location,
Yeah.
but now you don't have to be there.
Mm-mm.
So if you can be somewhere else, will people be somewhere else, I guess, is my first question. But then also, like, is this going to change the way people compete for jobs? Like, because right, you could apply for a job from anywhere. So
Yeah.
like you're like the volume of applicants that a lot of companies will get is going to go through the roof if they can work from anywhere. But then is the average wage for like an engineer at Apple going to go down because you can do a large majority of it from Florida, and Florida has no income tax, and you need significantly less to make it by? I'm just curious how this is going to potentially change like the minimum average wage of certain roles and certain industries. I think it could drastically bring it down.
Uh, there's so much to that. And I think this goes back to the sense of trust that companies have in their employees, because if they do give them the same amount of money and they're living in Florida, and they give it the same amount as someone who's living in California. So like let's say an internship for the summer, a stipend. I know someone who's going to be getting like $4,500 for housing here this upcoming summer. And that's like a good amount, right? If you take that to somewhere else other than California, you can live very nicely
Yeah,
in wherever you want. And so, do the companies specify like where you're going to be living,
maybe.
or do they just say you take this and we'll just call it even?
Do they have a different? Maybe they have a different income breakdown based on your state.
Yeah,
Like they measure cost of living. They kind of calculate what each state's I like standard of living you can afford based on what it costs to live there, and they level out everybody's standard of living so that you're making the same effectively as you would anywhere else.
yeah. Because if there's going to be a federal like wage for a certain type of employee, maybe
Mhm.
like let's say entry level engineer, then they have to consider like housing prices somehow. Like
Yeah, and I
someone
think
living in California is not going to be able to.
realistically thinking back, I don't think it would be a federal thing, but I guess more so like how are companies going to save money
Mhm.
by getting the same work, affording an employee the same standard of living by giving them 120 in Florida versus 200 in California.
And what kind of issues is that going to bring up?
Seriously.
If I found out my coworker was making a significant amount more, like that's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's really tough, because I mean, there's obviously nicer places in Florida and there's
Mhm.
not as nice places in California. So like you could still choose what you want to do like with that money.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there going to be a general restriction or a general difference in wages? And do you think that, so I don't know the answer to this
Yeah, I don't
question.
either.
It's complex because there's so many different working pieces. But do you think that this is positive for like the general population in order to have a more steady, or I, I don't really know how to say it, but a more general workforce that can be drawn on, so that now your applicants aren't just people who have the potential to be able to move into this specific area, but they can be somebody who is let's say in Florida, if they want to work
Mhm.
somewhere that is located in Silicon Valley.
I think it massively complicates things because right off the bat, the first thing I'm thinking of, like, I'm just thinking through, okay, you're going to get somebody to work for your company from Florida, and I'm just going to continue to use Apple
And use Florida.
and use Florida. Well, that Florida person is going to be one of probably, I mean, they probably get an obscene number of applicants to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But now if you're applying from anywhere you want in the United States, you are getting a very ridiculous amount of applicants. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know how you would even start to manage that much incoming interest. People are really good qualified candidates are going to get buried in the applicant pool. When you open up a post, if 500,000 people across the country for like a general, let's just call it like accounting. There's probably a ridiculous amount of people with accounting majors, fresh out of school, existing accountants, corporate accountants, whatever it is. You can get a ridiculous amount of applicants for an accounting role, and the best one could just get lost. Like, how are you going to weed out the best people?
The interview process needs to be better.
Yeah.
Right?
And then how do you effectively interview? I'm even just talking about, let's say you want, okay, so you get like 500,000. But I'm thinking, even if you choose a top 10 school, right? Because you want the best education, 5 years or more work experience, and then like you just tick off the top 3 or 4 priorities, you're not even going to get close. You're going to have thousands still. So how do you even start from there? And then who's going to be taking the time to walk through that? It's going to be a disaster.
So much hope in those words.
I mean, I just don't see how that could. I mean, somebody can figure out the technology to make it work. But man, that would be a battle.
But we're already experiencing this too, right? To a certain extent, I feel like over the past 5 or 10 years is to where we've had really qualified candidates and people are struggling to find jobs. Like you find somebody who graduates from a top 10 university and they're done with the college and they don't have a job.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's like, wow. I mean, obviously, if you graduate from a top 10 university, it doesn't mean you're a really good employee or really good at what you do.
Totally.
But still, just the fact that that's real is like, huh.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to make things a lot more complex and a lot more dirty.
Yeah, I mean, and then on top of that, you've got, a lot of, like the other financial implications that you were even talking about before is like, how is this going to impact housing? Like, could that mean California housing prices plummet because people start moving, first of all, which I think there's been over 5 years in a row where we've had more people move out of California than in. So the population of California is going down.
And
or the residents
are still going up.
Housing prices are still going up because a lot of people who are coming in with the paycheck and promise of a job here.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're telling me that now all of a sudden all of these executives and people who live here can live close to their families in the Midwest or on the East Coast, and they don't need their $12 million house here.
They can have their $1 million house.
They can have their $1 million house and a much better quality of life somewhere else. I think they would take it.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for, I mean, granted, people want to be near the coast. People love the weather. So some people will stay. But there's going to be a lot of people who don't really care, who'd much rather be near their family than be in California.
Mm-hmm.
So is that mass exodus of people leaving over the course of 10 years going to leave way too much real estate unattended in California? Could be.
What about, so kind of a bit of a transition.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who fly often for their work, let's
Mm-hmm.
say consultants or some type of salesperson as well.
Yeah.
Does that I mean, I think there's a huge benefit to being in person and meeting with clients and things like that. But does that just get kind of like, is that second option now? Now that everybody is adapted to Zoom for the most part? Or does that spark right back up and help the airlines again once things clear out?
Yeah, I think the tough thing is like there's always going to be early adopters, but my fear is that a lot of these companies who are making these decisions are maybe the old guard who is still in their executive suite, and they're going to be like, they're going to want to be face to face. So they're going to push, and again, it's a business expense too. So, like, how much, if they're working it into their typical expenses, how much are they going to care if they're sending a couple people from California to Florida?
Yeah, I don't
Still
know.
on Florida. Yeah. Um, you know, maybe they want the in-person feel of the relationship building, because I think a big part of what goes on with these consultant firms, in my opinion, when you're on an off-site like job like that and you're flying somewhere else to go do some work, you obviously want to be doing a good job in that moment, but half of it too is making sure that not only are you doing a good job, but you're building a relationship with that business owner or business executive or whoever's called upon your help so that they'll call you again.
Hmm.
It's about trying to get that repeat business. So I don't know if you can get that
Through Zoom.
through Zoom.
Yeah. I don't think, I mean, I don't, it's hard to build a relationship at all through Zoom.
Yeah.
It's tough. I
Yeah.
mean, it's definitely doable, and like especially in like clinical work, it's doable, but I don't think there would be any clinician who could say that, yeah, I'd prefer Zoom,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, it is tough.
I don't know that there's any legitimate relationship that I can say that I have that was established digitally.
Hmm.
And maybe we're just not at the point where like we've tried that thorough enough yet. But
Are you saying any relationship in general?
yeah,
Hmm.
I don't think I have a single relationship in my life that is predominantly established based on my interaction with them digitally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Now,
and that's something that's growing significantly with
I
the
think
younger
that's
generation.
the younger generation is going to be the first generation who has to determine how to form deep bonds with people that they never see in person.
Hmm. Yeah, and is it okay to like what is the quality of a relationship strictly online? I don't know if
Can it even work?
I mean, I think it can work because like think about World of Warcraft. Like people have incredible bonds with people that they game with online. And it's pretty impressive. And then there's like Discord now to where people connect with so many other people and they really feel a sense of community at times.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's negatives to that because there's QAnon and false information. But like, is that quality of that community and that relationship just as good as in person
I
based
would
on
say no.
like an emotional response?
I would say no.
Yeah. I think I would like to say no as well. I don't know if there's research. I'm sure there's got to be
Well,
research out there.
there is research on the addictive, like I think World of Warcraft specifically and League of Legends
Hmm.
were two of the most highly addictive games.
Oh yeah.
Um, there's research on that. And then what comes as part of playing one of these highly addictive games is people who report like going days and weeks on
Hmm.
like highly compromised sleep and nutrition and all of the other things we know biologically we need. So
Hmm.
even if the relationships are being established digitally, I don't think they can be considered like healthy if they're degrading all of these other um, necessary health attributes that like as a human being we require.
Yeah, the only
You can't
thing,
do it through a screen. Like you have to get outside one
yes,
time in a week. You have to
every
maybe
day.
like drink water and not Mountain Dew Code Red. Like that's a stereotype, I'm sure, but you know what I mean? You can't eat Totino's pizza rolls as good as they are. You can't be slamming Uncrustables, Nick.
I just love how you added this specificity of the Code Red to the
I
Mountain Dew.
mean, I think it's got the most caffeine in it.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yes, okay, I agree with you on that. And so, yeah, there needs to be a balance because people need to get outside and build relationships and a sense of community outside.
Right. And, you know, there's a where I will say that there's a positive aspect to those games for people is if you're in a bad situation and you need the escapism and you need to like find those relationships with somebody out there, it gives you access to that, which I think is a fantastic thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't do it at the expense of your health, like I just said. And I think that it's just it's not the same when you like literally don't want to go to sleep because you feel like when you're asleep you're not with those people.
Mm-hmm.
There's like I guess a level of like attachment that comes out of it too that's just probably it. I guess the point I'm trying to make is it doesn't promote a relationship in the way that human beings need them.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are.
Yes, it fills a void.
It fills
almost.
a void, but it's not. It's like one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Is that like emotional hit of serotonin from your relationships that you have. But like, for example, I can't just like take a relationship I have in my life and just like turn it off. Like it's there and I'm constantly engaged in that.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point.
But you can turn off the computer if you're mad at it.
Mm-hmm.
And you win that anger, argument, whatever you want to call it. You can step away from it and then return when you want. And it treats you no different.
Mm-hmm.
Find a new group of people to play with, jump back in with the old people. Don't bring up the old stuff. Focus on the game. It's just not legitimate in that sense.
That is so true. You could say whatever you want to them and experience no negative repercussions.
Yeah.
You can, just shut it down and end and quit.
Yeah.
And experience nothing.
There's no emotional accountability
mm-hmm.
for yourself and for others. I think that's even more important. Like people need to look across at somebody and be like, I have to be looking out for somebody else's best interest in this too. It's not just about myself. And there's no way people don't do it on Twitter. People don't give a damn on Twitter.
No.
I don't want to name names, but I noticed we both interacted on the same it was this morning.
Yeah.
It was did you see
he liked my comment?
Did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was the Twitter that was posted on Instagram, the Twitter words. Okay. Yeah, what did you feel was happening when you read that? I'm curious.
So I think we could name what it was said. So it just said, the tweet just said,
are we going to name? We don't have to censor anything, or should we? It was two professors in the same industry,
mm-hmm.
and one of them, I don't want to go as far as to use the word cheap shot. And I actually, the point I'm trying to make too.
Let's just name it all. Name it all. We're not big or anything.
That's true. Okay. Adam Grant, I absolutely fucking adore him as a psychologist in business who studies people at work. He puts out some unbelievable stuff. Jordan Peterson is another psychologist I also have a huge amount of respect and admiration for. He is a incredibly intellectual human being. He can synthesize thoughts that people have into the most digestible form that is so refreshing and really resonates.
And he's just incredibly well read.
Yeah.
Like he's,
And he really knows his stuff, and you can tell.
Yeah.
So Adam Grant put out a little tweet that he screenshotted and put on his Instagram. He tweeted it. He put his own tweet on his own Instagram and made a comment about a book an indirect comment. He didn't name him, but Jordan Peterson wrote a book called 12 Rules for Life.
Yeah.
He's got a follow-up,
Antidote to Chaos.
12 More Rules coming out. And Adam Grant posted this tweet of his own that said 12 rules.
12 rules for life. And then it said :
rule number 1, basically.
You only need one rule or something.
Yeah.
Stating like
live by your own values.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so go ahead and walk me through what you felt was happening in that. When you read that, you left a comment.
Yeah. I
actually liked your comment.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So I asked, what if your values are immoral?
Yeah.
Because then, like, is Hitler supposed to live by his values?
Right. That's a valid point.
Right? Like, no, I don't think he should live by his values. I think that that's terribly wrong.
And I don't. Yeah, and I think that that's the thing that, because I read the comments, actually. There was 40 comments when I read it.
Yeah. Somebody did say it was a cheap shot.
Yeah, somebody said it was a cheap shot. I'd say there were about 50-50 people, like, kind of, like, a few supportive people thought it was like, loved his message, whatever. But a vast majority were either specifically pointing out like the whole Jordan Peterson, this kind of feels like a cheap shot thing, that they took that approach, or they took the general, like the kind of approach you took, right? Like, regardless of the Jordan Peterson thing, like, maybe not. Like, maybe this is bad advice.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was so interesting. So I commented on it too.
What did you say?
Well, at first, because I remember he posted another, because his Instagram is entirely these tweets.
Yeah. And
essentially,
they're always really
they're
insightful.
Extremely insightful, very well thought. And I went back and because I remembered, like, 4 posts ago, he posted something about call out culture. And, like, instead of calling people out, maybe just call them, because instead of calling people out, maybe, like, just take the time to stop and educate people. So my first comment on it was to, like, I basically said, like, something along the lines of, like, I really enjoy the stuff that he puts out, and I really enjoy the stuff Jordan Peterson puts out, and to see that, like, 2 people of the same, that I have the same level of respect for, that one of them would take the time to, like, post kind of like a borderline slanderous, like, post about the other person's work. It just kind of seemed childish to me. And for all of the times he posts about, wanting, like, doing the right thing, creating a positive culture, I was just kind of like, wow, I did not expect that. Like, I just thought
I didn't expect that
I just
either.
thought there was, like, a certain level of class that we were at that was not that. I mean, like, is he intimidated by Jordan Peterson's work? Is he a better selling author than Adam Grant is? And he just, like, had to take his shot. Like I just didn't know why.
Yeah. Was it just for the response that he knew he was going to get from people, like, knowing that it was going to be a popular post?
Maybe. So then I deleted my comment. And instead of doing it in the comments, I did it via DM, and I sent him a much longer DM. Probably won't even read it, but
Maybe you will.
But in the spirit of, not giving into the idea of cancel culture, because I wanted to give him feedback that wasn't just for somebody else seeing it. Like, I genuinely gave him the feedback I gave him in the DMs with the purpose of, like I still, I even said this in it. I still respect you. I still love your work, but you preach a lot about doing the right thing, treating people right. And he does a lot on culture. And I said, hey, this is actually pretty interesting that you would take the time to kind of take a negative slight at one of your colleagues. I mean, in the academic community, two professors, even at different schools, refer to each other as colleagues. The fact that you would take the time out of your day to slight a colleague's work, maybe there's some larger cultural flaw in academia that he's willingly taking part in that needs to be addressed. So yeah, I kind of posed the question that way, but I thought that was a super interesting thing because I noticed you interacted on that this morning too, and it was like I was disappointed.
I definitely had a reaction, and
I was
that's
definitely
why
disappointed.
I felt the need to comment. I was like, man,
Yeah.
that is such a general statement that I don't think you can just throw out there like
Yeah.
that.
And I even said this in my comment to him or my message to him. I said,
See me outside.
No, I said, do you think, because one of Adam Grant's books that he's written is called Plan B. And I wrote in my comment, I was like, do you think Jordan Peterson would go out of his way to write a comment saying, you know what, Plan A was probably good enough, and just like totally slight your book? Like, I don't think he would do that unless he was like factually incorrect about something. But even then, he wouldn't like do a slight jab like that. I think he would like genuinely approach his science and critique it. So I don't know. We got pretty off topic with this.
No, but I think it brings up a good point because now I'm curious about, there's a lot of talk that like social media and Twitter and these things haven't like changed us at all. They've just like revealed what kind of people we are and what kind of thoughts that we have.
Yeah, that's a common Gary Vaynerchuk sentiment that he puts out there.
Yeah, and so do you think like Adam Grant making that tweet, he has, like we're saying in video games, the opportunity to say that and leave it and experience no negative feedback. Like he could never look at those comments or anything. And is that a value that he can say these things and be open about that? Or is it a bad negative consequence that he is able to potentially not experience any negative repercussions or hear anybody's words, which I do commend him on because he interacts with like all the comments, which is nice. But there's some people who just say random stuff and then don't say anything after. So is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? Or is it sometimes good, sometimes bad? Because that's probably what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the context that we're talking about right now, yeah, I think sometimes people say things without thinking and don't realize the implications of the things that they say. And I think in an internet world, the hardest part is not wanting to cancel somebody when they do one thing wrong. I think we're increasingly living in a world that does not allow for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Like, because everybody wants to like dogpile on somebody who makes a mistake. And I think that's absolutely terrible. I think I think in that sense, the internet is terrible because it doesn't highlight the fact that even with some, like, people can make a mistake, but on the internet, you can't be forgiven. I don't think the masses will forgive you.
No. And it doesn't promote dialogue at all.
No. Yeah, it's clickbait stuff, right?
Yeah. It doesn't, I'll say this, it doesn't promote listening. It promotes you getting your word out there and that's it. So it really gives you a platform to say stuff, but it doesn't encourage you to hear the other side at all.
Yeah.
And that's the significant problem.
And this is actually going to segue into another short segment that we're going to be doing later about listening.
Oh, yes.
That I think is a pretty interesting thought experiment that we're gonna mess around with, and we'll probably post in the next couple weeks.
Hell yeah.
So
And also, just one more point about the tweet that he did. Of course, like, he's putting his own bias on stating, like, live by your own values, stating that I assume that your values are good for the most part.
Of
Like, he's
course.
not saying
Of course.
Hitler
Yeah.
live by your own values, but still, yeah,
Mhm.
it was the sub. It's because it's like a subtweet, right?
Yeah.
How
Well-
he kind of called it out, the 12 rules for life. I was like, huh.
Well, and I think if I were really to like understanding where Adam Grant comes from on a lot of his advice and things of that nature, if I were to speak as a devil advocate for why he posted that, I think it would be because he sees, I'm sure, a lot of people who will not put in any thought to buy into Jordan Peterson's work, that misunderstand Jordan Peterson and will manipulate what Jordan Peterson says.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, people will take these 12 rules for life and think that like this is the end all be all. We have to listen and follow this. And I think what Adam's trying to do is be very supportive of people being and exploring themselves as an individual and living what's best for you, not living somebody else's 12 rules for life.
I think
You have
that's
to
what
do
he said too.
you have to do what's important to you and be happy.
Yeah.
I just am curious because I don't think I think that is in very much so alignment with what Jordan Peterson would say too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's like, it's almost putting words in his mouth.
Oh yeah, that's the yeah, that's the tough part.
Yeah.
Is that it does seem like that.
And I think that's maybe deep down what people are feeling is not necessarily that it's that he's trying to put the words in his mouth that by living his rules, you're not living yourself. You're becoming some kind of like robot to his 12 rules. And I just don't think that's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have hoped that, like we said, Adam Grant is very well thought out with the posts that he posts. And I typically absolutely love them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd be curious to see if he does a follow-up of any kind with that one, just to like give more context, because like you said, you can't do like the little like flash in the pan style posts and think that you're going to get your whole thought across. So if you're going to be kind of controversial about something or be kind of like taking shots at people, especially within your own community, people who follow Adam Grant because he's a psychologist also probably follow Jordan Peterson. I would say probably 80% of people.
Yeah.
So why be so thoughtless about this post when he's typically so thoughtful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
So
the other problem is that like people will have that initial reaction that you and I did this morning, and then they'll leave it at that because they'll be reading a next post or they'll be doing something else. And I'm a victim to that as well. Like I don't talk through everything that I find controversial or anything, but by not, like we could have formed an opinion of like Adam Grant's the worst and we should probably cancel him now. And that's, I think, is what is happening to a certain extent of not really thinking about what's going on and then also not having conversations about it. And then we pick a side and that's it.
Yeah.
Because like we're saying, like, yes, what he said was pretty unnecessary, I think, to a certain extent.
Yeah, it just was. It was just
but
like, why?
At the same time, like it's his opinion or he wanted to tweet that out and so he can. And he's doing it for a purpose to a certain extent. Like he's saying those things because
he's trying to impart his own positive message.
Yeah. And that doesn't get accepted if you're on the opposite side. So like you can still be frustrated with it and still understand the message is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's a struggle today. People want to be mad at certain things because there's a lot of stress in the world. And so when there's any chance,
people
snap. That was a tangent. That was probably the tangent.
The longest tangent we've gone down.
Yeah.
Typically we tend to stay pretty on topic, but
we hit water with this one.
Yep.
Well done.
Yeah. I mean, to tie it all back in, I think that our conversation with Marianne highlighted a lot of really important topics that are going to become relevant in the workplace. And I think that not so much that I think this is a good one to listen back to, or for the first time for people out there, because it's so important to be aware of these things as they're potentially happening.
Mhm.
And trying your best to make sure you're navigating this in the best and healthiest way for yourself. And there is going to be no positive change in your personal, meaning every individual's workplace, if they don't take a little agency over helping define what their future workplace is going to look like. And hopefully we've given people some good thoughts and good perspectives to go into their workplace and figure out the best way that their company culture and industry can maximize the lockdowns and the work from home orders that are going into place.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I agree. I hope that bosses can trust their employees and that employees can do the right thing to earn that trust.
Yeah.
Because it's what it's going to come down to.
Agreed.
Well, good conversation, Brendan.
Absolutely.
Thank you for stopping by Office Hours 006. And we will be coming with, like you said, that newer segment somewhat soon. It'll be a shorter thought process, but it should be pretty interesting. So stay tuned and enjoy your day.
Thanks.